I want to call to order the November 12, 2013 meeting of the Oshkosh Common Council. I want to welcome those of you that are here in the council chamber to the council chamber. I also want to welcome those who might be watching us on Channel 10, those who might be watching us on a computer, those who might be listening to us either on the computer or on the radio. This is your city government. This is your opportunity to make your thoughts known, and so we do appreciate you coming here and participating. I'm going to ask the clerk to take the roll call of the council members.
Allison Osby. Here. Pack.
Here.
Herman.
Here.
Clark.
Here.
Fitzgerald.
Here.
Cummings. Tower.
Here.
Present 6.
Okay, I'm going to ask everyone to rise, and we're going to have the invocation led by Councilmember Allison Osby, and then our students will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
We come together this evening to discuss the issues that confront our city. May we always seek the wisdom to do things that reflect our concern for the people whom we represent. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I ask our students to stand up here in front right where you were and turn around and face the folks who are here. Okay, we do appreciate you coming here tonight and helping us out with the Pledge of Allegiance. We'd like to find out a little bit about you. The folks who are watching would like to know a little bit about you. So I'm going to pass the microphone down, and why don't you tell people who you are, where you go to school, what grade you're in. And also, I think this is the month that Thanksgiving falls in. Why don't you indicate to us something that maybe you're particularly thankful for that you have?
My name is Madeline. I am 11. I go to Oshkosh Christian School, and I'm thankful for my parents and family.
My name is Dion. 10 years old. I'm in 5th grade, and I go to Oshkosh Christian or Valley Christian School. And I like Thanksgiving because of its family and friends.
Very good. I want to thank you. I have a certificate here for you, so let me give you each one of you a certificate. Madeline, here's yours, and here's one for you, Dion. Can we give them a hand here? Now you two are free to go, so you don't have to listen to the rest of all this. Okay, the next thing I have on the agenda tonight is a proclamation, and I think it's an important proclamation for the city of Oshkosh. It has to do with Small Business Saturday that's coming up later this month. So here's the proclamation. Whereas the government of Oshkosh, Wisconsin celebrates our local small businesses and the contribution they make to our local economy and community, according to the United States Small Business Administration, there are currently 28 million small businesses in the United States. They represent more than 99% of American companies, create 2/3 of the net new jobs, and generate half of the private gross domestic product. And whereas small businesses employ 1/2 of the employees in the private sector in the United States. And whereas 89% of consumers in the United States agree that small businesses contribute positively to the local community by supplying jobs and generating tax revenue. And whereas 86% of consumers in the United States have small businesses in their community that the consumers would miss if the small businesses closed. And whereas 93% of consumers in the United States agree that it is important for people to support the small businesses that they value in their community. And whereas 90% of consumers in the United States are willing to pledge support for a buy local movement. And whereas Oshkosh, Wisconsin supports our small businesses that create jobs, boost our local economy, and preserve our neighborhoods. And whereas advocacy groups and public and private organizations across the country have endorsed the Saturday after Thanksgiving as Small Business Saturday. Now, therefore, I, Burke Tower, Mayor of the City of Oshkosh, do hereby proclaim November 30th, 2013 as Small Business Saturday and urge residents of our community and communities across the country to support small businesses and merchants on Small Business Saturday and throughout the year. I think this is important for the community. We're kind of the backbone in many ways of the community. It's what makes our business community particularly unique. So my hope is, as you think about your shopping for the holidays and whatever, that you'll take advantages of the many small businesses we have throughout the community. So thank you. Okay, the next thing we have on the agenda are public hearings. We have 4 public hearings and only, let's see, check on one thing here. Is the first one? Is this one?
Yeah, we'll vote on that
voted?
one.
Okay,
These two.
okay, that's, I didn't see if there's an answer.
The next two.
Okay, there are 4 public hearings tonight. Only one of them will be voted on tonight. The one that will be voted on tonight actually was brought up at the last meeting, and people spoke at that time about it. And we'll do it again tonight and give people an opportunity to speak about it tonight, and then I'll bring it back to the council for consideration of approval. Okay, each of these I'm going to read 3 times, and if at any time I'm reading these during the 3 times that I'm reading it, you would like to come up to the microphone and make a comment on the ordinance or the resolution for which you have the public hearing, please do come up to the microphone. It's open. Okay, number 1 is Resolution 13-487. Approve final resolution for special assessments, cold mix, asphalt paving, alley north of 21st Avenue and east of Oregon Street. Resolution 13-487, approve final resolution for special assessments, cold mix asphalt paving, alley north of 21st Avenue and east of Oregon Street. The third and final reading, Resolution 13-487, approve final resolution for special assessments, cold mix asphalt paving, alley north of 21st Street and east of Oregon Street. I see no one coming forward. The last chance here. Okay, I'll bring it back to the council for a motion and a second.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion by the council? See no discussion, I'll ask clerk to take the roll call vote on Resolution 13-487.
Allison Osby.
Aye.
Peck.
Aye.
Herman.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Fitzgerald.
Aye.
Tower.
Aye.
Carried 6.
Okay, I'll move on to the second public hearing. Ordinance 13-488, approve rezoning 2212 Montana Street from M3 General Industrial to M2 Central Industrial. Ordinance 13-488, approve rezoning 2212 Montana Street from M3 General Industrial to M2 Central Industrial. Yes.
Jack Meyer, 637 West South Park Ave. That property, 2212 Montana, I purchased about 6 years ago with the sole intention of using it to expand my business building at 2200 Montana Street. The reason for the rezone was to join the 2 properties under one zoning part and to alleviate some of the fixtures that would have to go into the property with the new road that just got put in, because it'll become one piece of property. That was the reason we did this and requested the rezoning.
Okay. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming forward. Anybody else at this point? I'll read it one more time. Ordinance 13-488, approve rezoning 2212 Montana Street from M3 General Industrial to M2 Central Industrial. See no one coming forward. This was the first reading tonight. It'll be read again on the 26th, and then it'll be up for approval by the council at that particular point in time. If anybody would like to speak to this issue on the 26th, you'll feel free to do so also. Okay, the third one, Ordinance 13-489, approve rezoning 663 West 3rd Avenue from R2 two-family to M2 Central Industrial. Ordinance 13-489, approve rezoning 663 West 3rd Avenue from R2 two-family to M2 Central Industrial. Third and final reading for tonight. Ordinance 13-489, approve rezoning 663 West 3rd Avenue from R2 two-family to M2 Central Industrial. Anybody like to come forward? I see no one coming forward, so once again, this will be read again at the next meeting, be up for approval at the next meeting, so anybody could come forward at the next meeting and speak to it at that time also. Okay, the fourth and final public hearing. This is the 2014 city budget, and so there can be discussion at this point in time. If people would like this a public hearing for the public, to come forward to the microphone, we'll give your name, give your address, speak for no more than 5 minutes, and direct your comments to the council. So again, 2014 city budget.
Hi, Jesse Fisher, Oshkosh firefighter. Tonight I would like to discuss two issues a bit more in depth as it pertains to the proposed budget reductions. The first issue is protecting life and property, which is the very reason Oshkosh Fire Department exists. I understand that you have a difficult task of making cuts to the city budget, and I don't envy any of you a bit. However, I do not believe the cuts should compromise the tremendous service we provide to our citizens for their hard-earned tax dollars. Reducing this department by 5 men and removing the heavy rescue means increased response times for men and proper equipment to arrive at the scene of a fire or an accident when every second counts. Imagine how a family feels watching helplessly as their home is engulfed in flames, or hoping a loved one can hold on just a little bit longer until help and proper equipment arrives. In addition, increased response times also means a much higher likelihood of severe injury and death to firefighters and anyone trapped inside needing assistance. I truly believe that every firefighter on this department will do whatever is necessary to protect the lives of our citizens, even if it means risking their own safety. People count on firefighters to make an aggressive interior attack on fires, successfully accomplish victim rescue, fire control, and property conservation. They trust us to protect what is the most important to them. Currently, the heavy rescue responds to all fire calls, vehicle accidents, and water and ice rescues. By instituting these cuts, you are asking the fire chief to make an educated guess on where to place the equipment the heavy rescue would normally carry to a scene. If he guesses wrong, the firefighters and victims will have to wait an extended period of time for another fire truck to bring the necessary equipment. This will severely hamper firefighters from performing their tasks in a timely manner and put lives at further risk. The second issue I'd like to address is forced overtime. Every year, Oshkosh hosts numerous events that call for fire and paramedic coverage, including EAA, Country USA, Rock USA, stock car races, and the Tough Mudder competition, to name a few. The fire department provides fire and ambulance service for these events. In 2012, the department needed to fill 132 positions to cover these events. Of the 132 positions, 30 paramedics were ordered in. In 2013, those numbers went to a total of 196 positions, with 48 paramedics being ordered in. As you can see, almost 80 paramedics were ordered in during a 4 to 5 month period in the last 2 years. That's almost 8 paramedics per month during that time frame, with some paramedics being ordered in numerous times. This can lead to increased stress, early burnout, and lower morale, which do not bring about positive outcomes overall. Firefighters put their lives on the line constantly and are put into situations that require quick thinking and actions. It is a high-stress job because they must make decisions that directly impact lives and property. Time away from the job to de-stress, regroup, and spend time with family is important to their well-being and for the safety of the public. I believe the citizens of Oshkosh deserve the high level of dedicated service they currently enjoy, and I believe the Oshkosh firefighters deserve the safest possible work environment and the proper equipment needed to provide that service. I ask you to please vote on the side of keeping our community well protected and served. Thank you.
Thank you.
What was the gentleman's address?
I live in Fond du Lac. N5929 County Road K.
Thank you. Anybody else like to come forward? If people would like to come forward, maybe get 2 or 3 in line here, ask 2 things so that we can keep this moving if there are going to be a lot of people, number 1. And number 2, try to keep the redundancy to a minimum. Thank you.
Hi, Janice Moss, 41 Stony Beach Road, Oshkosh. I'm here tonight to put a face to what you're going to be, what the man just spoke about the fire equipment and the personnel. In December of 2011, I got a phone call at work. It was from Winnebago 911. She said, you need to get home, your house is burning down. When I got home, they were still bringing the cats out. I was a crazy person. I tried to get away. I tried to get into the house. I wanted to rescue the cats myself. The police officer who was there, he said, no, you stay here. Let the firemen do their job. They're trained. They know what they're doing. Let them do their job. As the cats started to come out, they were, for all intents and purposes, dead. They had pink, frothy foam coming out every orifice. They were limp. One of the firemen sat under the tree and started to pump on him and to work on him and to give him oxygen and try to bring him back to life. One of their colleagues told me, they said, he has cats. He's not going to give up on them. He knows what he's doing. Meanwhile, another one came up and said, there's still a guy in your building. The man who just spoke was crawling in my attic trying to get one of the cats. I said, please don't let him get hurt. I don't want a human being to be lost in this. At the end, when it was all said and done, the fire chief came up to me and he said, you're actually quite lucky. He said, when we got here, we took temperature of the building on all the sides, and the house was within 2 minutes of exploding. He said, you would have lost everything. The insurance rated it as an 80% loss. 20% of my heirlooms were saved. 20% of my pets were saved. The only way I get through it, through this whole thing, is by the support of family and friends, my colleagues. The community was great. Oshkosh Humane Society came and helped. Lakeside Animal Hospital helped. But I still have 20%. I don't have nothing. 2 minutes. If they had been 2 minutes later, would I have that 20%? I don't know. I'm not rich. I don't have a lot of money. Mr. Roloff, you were cited in the newspaper as asking people to come forward and tell you what we want you to do. We say don't raise our taxes, but we don't want anything cut. I don't think we should mess around with this. These are the professionals. They know what they're doing. If they tell you they need that rig, they need that rig. That rig was parked in front of Stony Beach, 41 Stony Beach Road, disgorging all of its supplies into my house. If they say they need it, let's keep it. If they say they need that staffing, let's not fool around with their safety. We've seen what cuts in education have done. Let's not fool around with the community safety and the firemen's safety. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry to hear about your loss. Next, somebody else. Again, we have 2 or 3 people. We'll be behind there so we can keep this moving.
Good evening. I'm Alex Hummel, 1235 Wisconsin Street. I'm here tonight serving as your president of the Oshkosh Public Library Board of Trustees. I'm going to be brief because I know you've got a long agenda and a lot of work ahead. On behalf of the Library Board, I just simply want to express our appreciation for the city's 2014 budget proposal for the Oshkosh Public Library. We very much understand, as we've just heard, that our city budget deliberations are going to involve a complex and thoughtful process, and no question about it, there are some very, very difficult decisions ahead. We think, and we think you agree, that the investment in our public library in this city is a smart one. Like anything in these continually challenging times, the library is not without its funding challenges.
Wait just a second, Alex.
Sure.
If anybody else has cell phones, will you please turn them off at this point in time? Okay, I'm sorry.
No problem.
You want to start again, feel free to. I'll start you again.
We recognize, too, that in these challenging times, the library is not without its own funding challenges, and we've got some hard decisions ahead, too. But I just want you all to know that the library board is committed to working with you, with our director, Jeff Gilderson-Dewey, and our city staff, when we all have a very common goal in this city, and that's to proudly demonstrate to the citizens out there, to our region, and to our state, that our library is more than just a passive place. Our library is a powerful engine for individual and family literacy and learning. Our library helps people and helps communities grow and prosper. So we are so proud of the centerpiece of our downtown that the library serves as. And again, in challenging times, we're more committed than ever to preserving and enhancing as we can the public resource that the library is for everyone's success of every type and kind. As the budget process moves ahead, we know you'll continue to benefit from the great leadership and partnership from Jeff, and your library board stands ready to collaborate when appropriate to help too. Thank you for your service and leadership. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
My name is Patricia Diener. I live at 1316 Broad. I come this evening, too, in regard to your budget cutting, if you have to, but I prefer you not to cut. They were just talking about some incidents, and I remember the last race we had at the speed zone. My daughter went to help someone that had a massive heart attack. She started working on the gentleman. Nobody didn't want to get involved. Good thing we had the Oshkosh ambulance out there, because they came over and started working with the gentleman. He got to live 4 or 5 days, but we at least tried to keep someone alive.
Thank you.
My name is Rob Patterson. That's 1T, not 2. I'm here to speak about...
Your address, Rob? Your address?
Oh, I'm sorry. 530 North Main, apartment 103.
Thank you.
I'm here to talk about, I'm representing the Aging and Disability Resource Center, and I wanted to thank you for the changes you made on route number 4 and route number 9, and where it goes into the hospital now on route number 9, and on route 4 it goes into it goes around onto Packer, and that's another way to get. That's an easier way to get in to Affinity on Jackson Street.
But Mr. Patterson, can I ask you a question? Are you going to talk about the budgetary aspects of this, or do you just want to talk about the route?
I just want. There's another route I'd like to talk about.
The routes?
Yeah,
So you want-
another route.
Could I ask you to speak at the citizens' comments unless you're going to relate this to the budget? We're just talking about the budget at this point.
Okay, that's fine.
Is that okay? So you can get back up and start again
Okay.
when I ask for citizens' comment? Is that
Sure.
okay? Because we'll focus. We're just focusing on the budget right now. This is not.
I don't
just
have a
citizens-
copy of the agenda, unfortunately.
That's okay. No problem. No problem.
Okay.
You can just sit down, and then it'll be coming up right after we finish this discussion of the budget. We'll get into citizens' comments, and then feel free to speak about it at that time.
Good evening. My name is Gary Gray, 815 West Glenwood. Talk about the budget. I've attended, as most people know on the council, a lot of the council workshops, and also looked at the budget. Unfortunately, I don't have anything specific to say that much, by the fact that I guess, quite frankly, I'm a little bit confused. There's sometimes where the figures don't match that seem that they should match. There's statements that are made that are not verifiable, statements that perhaps are inconsistent, and it's difficult to say this is good or this is bad. I think that I think there's also some issues or some concern about how to look at the budget in general and not specific for programs or activities departments. No, is the budget? Well, I guess what I'm trying to say is the budget. Is the budget just attempt to get the revenues equal to the expenses, or expenses are equal to revenues, or is the budget supposed to be to allocate limited resources to expenditures? Also, one of the problems is that in regards to talking about maybe a specific program or specific department, is all the departments I heard on in the workshops and look at the budget all have good cases to present, and that's great. You know, I would hate to see city money spent on bad programming. I guess one specific point I would make is in regards to the heavy-duty unit. There's some concerns about keeping the heavy-duty unit or not keeping the heavy-duty unit. That, to some extent or to a great extent, is not the appropriate question, because the fire department, Oshkosh Fire Department, can have a heavy-duty unit even if it only had 80 people in it, not 108 people or 60 people in it. They can. It's up to the police and fire commission and the fire chief to decide on how the personnel is used. And the proper question, I think, is we all want a good and effective fire department. How many people, how many employees is a good fire department? Is it 108? Is it 103? Is it 120? You know, people have stated tonight that the fire employees are taxed and overworked. Well, maybe the city council should increase from the 108 to 115 because of the overcommitment, overtime. So the proper question, I think, is what makes a good fire department? I think the process of budgeting is basically a series of compromises, a series of advocacy and compromises, and it's very difficult for a person not involved in that decision-making process to make a very firm case in regards to doing something or not doing something. I guess that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Are we in the right place
No comments.
now? Do you know if this is the right place for us to be? Is this for the roads?
I'm not sure what road it is.
Well, Old Street.
I'll have Mr. Patek talk to him, Mr. Mayor.
What? Okay.
Mr. Patek will talk to him.
This gentleman can go outside with you. Go outside with Mr. Patek if you would.
Right behind you.
We'll wait till this gets settled, and then we'll get your due time at that point.
My name is Ron Hanchini. I reside at 52 Eveline Street. I'm here this evening to support continued budgeting through the community development projects that are handled by community development. I'm on the steering committee of the Stevens Park Association, and I'm also representing the newly formed associations in the city. As a way of urging you to support the budget, I'd like to just kind of briefly go through projects that Stevens Park has done in the last 3 years since we put together our existence. Last year, for an example, with the city community development department and NeighborWorks and many volunteers from the Stevens Park Association, we created the Stevens Park Gateway, which is the Bowen Street Triangle, which is planted, and I'm sure all of you have seen it. We also created 2 gardens at the Stevens Park that are at the Eveline Street entrance and the Frankfurt entrance, and they are annual gardens that the Stevens Park Association maintains every year, as well as maintaining the Bowen Street gardens. Just by brief explanation of what we have done this year so far, and with the cooperation of community development, in May we held a May Day celebration at the park, and we had approximately 75 to 80 people attend. That's a good percentage of the people that live within the neighborhood of Stevens Park. The next month, in June, there was the dumpster days that was supported by community development, and Stevens Park needed 2 dumpsters. We were only awarded 1, so we went out and raised funds to get a second one. Both of those dumpsters were overflowed and had to be hauled away. Unfortunately, they had to wait till Monday, but they should have been hauled away that they were so full on Saturday already. In July, Stevens Park Association has a association rummage sale. This year we had about 70 houses, which amounts to about 8% of all of the houses in our district. So we feel that's a pretty good representation of how our group is helping the city. In August, we had the Oshkosh Neighborhood Night Out, and we had over 100 people out for that event. Some of you were there, and we appreciated your attendance. How we handle these things are 2 different ways. One, we have an email list of about 150 people that live in the neighborhood, and we email them regularly on events. We also, at each of our events, 5 times during the year, develop a flyer that we pass out to every household in the Stevens Park Neighborhood District. This is done by volunteers. The paper is donated. The printing is donated. The plastic bags that we put in are donated. And we would like some help sometimes. The final event that we put on this year was the what we called Fall Fest. And what we did is we were having a dinner, dance, and movie in the park on a Friday night. Unfortunately, it rained. Through our email network, we were able to get the next Friday night and have about 30 people out there. So that's how we operate. What we would like to ask you to do is to continue to fund community development in the manner that it's been funded previously and assist us in helping to run the community park neighborhood associations. There are several in the city. NeighborWorks is forming more, but they do need the help of the community development department. What really happens is that in these neighborhood associations, we would like to develop flyers for all of the neighborhood associations to present to new families, either renting or owning in the neighborhood, to tell them about the neighborhood, to show them the beautification projects that are being done, all the other things that the neighborhood associations are doing. For an example, 2 weeks ago on Sunday, in cooperation with the Parks Department, funding by the Stevens Park Association, we are developing on the north side of Stevens Park a 120-foot by about 10 to 12-foot wide and a perennial garden. 2 Sundays ago, Parks Department on Friday dumped 2 loads of mulch. The week before, volunteers stripped the sod, and on Sunday we had 10 people out there to spread the mulch, so we're ready in the spring to get that garden going in Stevens Park. All of these things do several things. One, they help to create a good tax base for the neighborhoods, which you are interested in. They also help to reduce crime in the neighborhood, which you are interested in, and they also do beautification projects in the neighborhood. Those items need support from community development, and that's why we're asking you as neighborhood associations to maintain the funding and hopefully increase the funding in the future for neighborhood associations. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else like to come forward? Let me again ask that if you want to come up and speak, people are limited to 5 minutes, so after somebody's about 3 minutes, if people could get in line, I would appreciate it.
Good evening. My name is David G., 1378 Oakwood Court. Obviously, I'm one of your firefighters, got 28 years of experience. I want to speak about keeping the 5 positions for the heavy rescue. You've gotten inundated with facts at the budget hearing from Chief Franz. Jesse Fisher gave you a ton of information, so I won't be redundant. The heavy rescue does over 600 runs a year. By eliminating that, other companies have to fill. You start moving companies around to take those over 600 runs. That makes delays in other areas. We have an inherently dangerous job. We accept those risks. But how we mitigate or minimize those risks is putting the proper people in the proper spots at the proper time. And our chief officers do a great job with that. By eliminating these positions, eliminating the heavy rescue, that's going to take people away from protecting us, protecting the citizens of the city. Now, I want to clear up a couple of possible misconceptions. Some people believe that we're 3 people short, and if we're already functioning with 3 less positions, why can't we just keep functioning as we are? That's not accurate. We are 3 positions, currently 3 positions short, but we're filling those positions with overtime each and every day. The heavy rescue has been open every single day. Another possible misconception is some people believe that if we cut the positions and we at least somehow get the truck to the scene, we'll have the equipment. That's also a misconception. We can have a parking lot full of equipment. If we don't have the people there to use it and use it in a timely manner and use it properly, all the equipment in the world will do us no good. We're Event City USA. You've promoted it a great deal in the last several years, and I'm assuming you're going to continue to promote it. You spent a great deal of money promoting Event City USA. Now, I understand that we get reimbursed when we cover those events at the venue that we cover. But with the amount of people coming into town, the runs we go on aren't only at those venues. We have increased people in the town, increased car accidents, increased medical emergencies because we have a large influx of people in town, and that taxes the other aspects of the fire department, not the overtime ambulance that's dedicated only solely to that venue. Our runs have increased every single year. Obviously, they told you about how many slots have overtime have allocated during special events. That has increased every single year. With our runs increasing, special events increasing, now is not the time to cut positions from the fire department. Cutting positions, having them cover these runs, delay in response means safety, our safety and the citizens' safety. Please keep the positions. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? See no one coming up? Okay, I'll read it one more time. 2014 city budget. That's the 3rd time for reading it. A couple of things here. One, the council's had, I believe, 6 budget workshops to this point in time. The council will also have a budget workshop on the 20th, at which time we'll be working on some different kinds of thoughts, putting some things together to look at the budget. On the 26th, the budget itself will be brought up for consideration. Again, that'll be a final reading at that night. We will pass a budget that night. The budget we'll start with will be the one presented by the city manager, and then council members have the opportunity to make amendments to that city budget. For instance, the fire department, somebody could say we should put those back in or whatever. But there are a number of other areas that I know of concern to a number of people at the same time. So that's kind of the process. My suggestion is, because the council will be having a highly interactive discussion on the 20th, that if you have some thoughts that you want to get to council members, use your email, your telephones, whatever, your letter writing capability, whatever it may be, to get the information to the council members by the 20th, because at the 20th you will have gotten a lot of input, and we'll be getting to at least give some direction to the city manager that when he comes, he is prepared to deal with possible different scenarios at that particular night, or possible amendments. He'll be able to have the data which will indicate the adjustments that have to be made that particular night, so that night we'll understand exactly what the figures are before we actually vote on the budget. With that background, it doesn't come back here for a formal vote, but we had indicated that I would open up if any council members want to engage in some discussion tonight. You can make any comments, or any council members would like to make any comments about the budget tonight, feel free to do so at this time. If you'd like to. Yes, Mr. Fitzgerald.
Just a very short comment. I've certainly appreciated the comments and responses that we've gotten from citizens over email, telephone, stopping by and seeing me at my office. Just a couple of quick things. Those individuals that have provided some support for either recommending that we don't do a cut, but providing support for a tax increase or a recommendation for a cut elsewhere is appreciated. That helps us know what compromises we need to make, because there's we can't just not make cuts and then leave a gap unfilled somewhere else. So I give some thought to what you're willing to sacrifice as well in terms of a cut if you're going to make a recommendation to us. And then I think we've all received some emails, even some phone calls where there's just a facetious tone right off the bat from citizens. These are just recommendations we're talking about at this point. Let's talk about them like we're neighbors and citizens, and we'll give each other some mutual respect, and I think that'll make the conversation go further, and we'll I think be able to both listen to each other a lot easier than some of the name calling and some of the poor tones that many of us have received in the emails.
Other comments? Anyone?
I'll make one.
Mr. Herman.
Just to follow up with what Sean said, there are 10 total cuts. So we're, the fire department obviously is the most, if you want to say controversial, the most concerning to our citizens, obviously. But there are other cuts. Last year we cut some positions within the budget, some citizen, employees. This year, every cut we make is going to have an impact. The museum's going to have an impact if we go through with that cut and the assistant director gets cut. Your parks, talked about Stevens Park Association. We're going to be cutting probably some positions in the parks. That means the grass probably won't get cut as often. Some of the other things that the parks caretakers do won't get done. That will have an impact. Citizens won't be happy about that. We're going to be cutting a position in economic development probably. So there are other cuts, not just in the fire department, so I want citizens to be aware of that. There is no easy cuts anymore. Our employee cost takes up 80% of our budget in most cases. But public safety, police, fire, public utilities, for me as a council member, is very important, and I will support as much as I can, but other cuts will have to happen that will have an impact to everybody in this room that is a taxpayer of the city of Oshkosh. So just be aware of that if we add the firefighter positions, and they're not cut yet, so I shouldn't say adding them back. It's a proposal, as he mentioned. But just be aware that if we put those positions, keep those positions, we're going to have to cut somewhere else. That's going to affect services. It could be public, we got information, we have 26 snowplow routes, but we don't have 26 snowplow drivers unless we cross over departments. So there are things that will be impacted no matter where we put the cut. It's just a recommendation, and public safety is obviously a very important part. And my background, being a retired sheriff's deputy, I look at public safety as a very important piece. There's two things or three things that a city provides its citizens: is police, fire, and public works. Those are the three biggest things I think people move to to a community for and expect from their local government. So just remember, if we retain those positions, there'll be cuts in other places that could affect other people's interest in that too. But it's important, and we appreciate all the input we get from the citizens. I've heard from a lot, and so I appreciate it. And as the mayor always says before we start our council meetings, this is your government, so we need to hear from you too, and it's important. So thanks.
Anybody else? No? I guess not. I'll just make a couple of comments in support of what's already been said here. We do appreciate the input. We do want the input. That becomes important to us. It's also important to us that as you make the input, you recognize the enormity of the budget and the balancing of interest. A couple things to keep in mind here. While we're talking about some cuts, and that word has been used a great deal, actually this budget, our total expenditures for the city are up slightly. The way we're also doing it, but we need to have a balanced budget. There's also built into the existing budget with the cuts already about a 3.6% in the net levy increase, which translates into about a 2.89 increase in your rate. So what that means, if we add things back in from what is being proposed, as Mr. Herman said, either you got to suggest other cuts or say, I want to pay more money. We also have, I believe there are like 5 or 6 different increases in fees that are built into this budget. They aren't called taxes, but they have impacts on people. So really, the net increase with the budget as presented is well over that 3% on an average household. And that's what's tough for us. We don't like to have those increases, and we hear from people also. That's the reason it is important to understand the whole budget and just not the particular area of interest you're in. But if you're interested in an area, try and look at other areas and be broad. That's what we have to be. We have to balance all of the interests that are out there. The budget is available. For those that want to take a look at the whole budget, it is available on the city's website, so you can go to the city's website. There's also a copy in the library, I believe, so you can look at the whole budget and see what's going on in a whole host of areas down there. So I would urge you, as you start thinking about things in specifics, to get some feel for the totality and how that specific fits the rest of the budget. But again, we do want your input. It's going to be very helpful to us. We're going to have some tough decisions. You can feel free to come to the workshop on the 20th. You won't have an opportunity to say things at that particular meeting, but if you want to watch the council interact and get some idea with some of the directions the council members may be going, you'll be able to see it. I would assume also that will be televised. We've televised all of our workshops so far, so if you don't have the time to come down, you can turn it on and do whatever else you happen to be doing at home or watch it on your computer or whatever. So we do look for your interest. Thank you very much, again, for your comments tonight, for being here, and for your continuing comments. Okay, that takes us to citizen statements to the council. This is a time when people have an opportunity to talk to the council about some concern that they may have in the city, or about maybe they may want to make a comment about something that's positive in the community. We always like those things, too. They don't come as often, but we do appreciate those comments at times. If you'd like to make a comment, the microphone is open. Feel free to come up to the microphone. If you do, we ask that you give us your name and address, limit your comments to no more than 5 minutes, direct your comments to the council, please, and there's to be no electioneering, and there's to be no discussion of anything else on the budget, on the agenda tonight. So these will all be things that are not on the agenda. Mr. Patterson, this would be the time that if you want to come up and talk about the bus routes.
I threw my notes together this afternoon.
Should I have him give his name and address again? Or
I have it.
You got it before. Okay, we're all set. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. I threw my notes together this afternoon, so it might be a little off. 5 minutes. Basically, I'm going to talk to you about the bus routes and the changes, and I appreciate what you did for the changes to the hospitals and stuff. Tonight, I'm going to talk about a specific route, and then I'm also going to compare it it's part of my argument. I'm going to be talking about Route 2, which goes on Jackson Street, and it's a drop-off for Pick and Save. The bus company decided not to go into the parking lot, and part of the reasoning they've given us is they want to expand the route. That's fine with me, but you have a sidewalk, and then there's the street. And of course, the snow is going to be piled up in between. And I'm just wondering, number one, who's going to shovel it? And that it's also a safety concern. And it's not only a safety concern for people who use the bus, it's safety for the bus drivers. And as far as I know, they have a bus stop still in the parking lot. My suggestion was, instead of going around and picking this up on Jackson Street, is to come into the parking lot of Murdoch. And then you come around, and then you get the other side of the bus stop, or near there, and then it would go out on Jackson Street. In other words, it wouldn't interfere with the other part of the lot, which would become a residential area now. I guess my reasoning for the parking lot argument is that there are several routes where the bus does go in the parking lot, and I'll just list them. It goes into, on Route 3, it goes into the parking lot of the senior center. And then Route 4 is the one that was changed. But it also goes into the food pantry from Wisconsin Street, the back. And then Route 7 is the transfer point for the west side of town. And that is over at Walmart, in that parking lot. And you can also transfer to bus number 9, which is also change buses, and that is in Walmart too. The other parking lot that it goes into is the new YMCA, and it's just interesting to me that while we can do all this, it's just a small change, and of course the bus company wants to argue that it'll take more time, and I think, but what, it's an issue of safety, and so let's see. And I thought the great irony of this whole issue was that the city wants to save money, and if they want to save money, they're actually spending it, because the people I represent, the ADRC, and part of family care that uses the city bus here in town, have gone to more expensive transportation, and this is the budgetary part. And while I don't have the specifics, tonight, I'll try and get them for you. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Anybody else like to speak at citizen statements at this particular point in time?
My name is Dave Gronier, 2415 Kingston Place, Oshkosh. I understand that there's some talk of removing mid-block streetlights recently. These yellow bulbs that they have in these streetlights give very poor light. In areas with large trees on terraces and on lawns, this creates a hazard as the poor light is obstructed and is very dark in a lot of these areas. A family in my area has a young autistic child, and they have a mid-block light in front of their house, which would be a hazard if it was removed, because it is quite dark there when the trees with all the leaves on them and so on. And I had a neighbor too that was driving at night in an area with spaced streetlights and nearly hit 3 young kids who crossed the mid-block area of the street. They had dark clothing on, and she didn't see them until they got out far enough where her headlights picked them up. And it just creates serious hazards. People are afraid to walk at night because it's quite dark in some of these areas too, and the crime rates what they are today. And some areas in the city have real short-spaced street lights. On Jackson Street's one, and there's some other ones too. Some of those street lights can't be more than 70, 80 feet apart instead of the 300 or 400 feet apart. So I think it's kind of a serious hazard to take these out. I could see where you wouldn't have a problem if you don't have trees and they're big wide open areas. It's not that bad, but when you have obstructions, it's awful dark. And it's too bad with these yellow type bulbs in there, they just do not give much light at all. They're very poor. So that's all I had to say about it, because a lot of people are kind of worried about it.
Thank you. It's both
Okay, thanks.
an issue which you spoke to. It's also a budget-related issue because that's part of where it's coming from, too.
My name is Patricia Diener. I would like to thank everybody for what they did yesterday for Veterans Day. We all enjoyed the ceremony at the courthouse. It was a real treat to go to Applebee's and to the Corral, and I would like to give a lot of recommendation to the vets and people from the county. And I was just going to talk to the gentleman was talking about too. I've been over in the 500 block of Bowen. I have a veteran's wife that I help in the fall. He retired and passed away. And we need to try to help with the lights. I go down Jackson quite a bit. I go down Bowen quite a bit. And that 500 block from probably Irving to Merritt is pure dark. I don't want to get on the issue, but you light up the river. You tell me how many people are going to walk the river at night when the cold weather comes. They got the lights down here. I think you need to start putting lights back on. It would stop with the crime. It would stop with a lot of stuff. We've had a lot of problems with speeding over in our block. But an officer happened to get somebody the other night. There was poor vision. There was trees hanging there. Said he didn't see a yield sign. Went through that. Well, before we knew it, they were there about an hour. They brought the dogs along, check out for dope, drugs, got them for 3 or 4 citations. You know, this is what we need. You got to start clamping down. And it takes citizens like me to push for a speed sign in my neighborhood. They told me it would take 2 or 3 months. Well, they did it. And this is what we need. And I think the lights need to be turned on. I know we're all cutting budgets, but you know what? You got to think of safety. You got to think of violence. Think of all the things that can happen. And everybody's worried about the river. They're worried about the bridge being light up. They're worried about the lights on the river. And it's a shame.
Thank you. Anybody else like to come forward at this point in time? Okay, seeing no one come forward, I'll move to the next item on the agenda, which is a consent agenda items. This is a set of items that the administration has put together that feel that they're non-controversial, so they'll be taken up as a package unless either a citizen or a council member asks that a particular item be removed from the consent agenda. What I'm going to do is read through the consent agenda items. If you would like to speak to a consent agenda item, as I read through that item, I would appreciate it if you would find your way to the microphone there. Once again, give us your name and address, limit your comments to 5 minutes, and speak to that particular item. After I go through all the items and give citizens an opportunity to make comments, if they'd like to, I'll bring it back to the council for some comments, and then we will put it up for a motion for approval and a vote finally. Okay, the consent agenda items. Approval of bills presented by Finance Director. Approval of cash report for September 2013. Receipt and filing of Common Council minutes from October 22, 2013. Receipt of claims filed with the city's insurance company. First one, Douglas Berger for alleged damages from a sewer backup. Second one, Catherine Steffen for alleged damages from a garbage truck hitting her vehicle. There are more claims that have been filed. The next one is Lawrence Birch for alleged water backup. And the last one is the Christine Ann Center for alleged sewer backup. That takes us to Resolution 13-491, award bid for passenger waiting shelters for Transportation Department to Handy Hut, Inc. Resolution 13-492, approval of change order number 1 for Public Works contract number 13-13 with Integrity Grading and Excavating, Inc. for impacted soil excavation, transportation, and site grading, Public Works Field Operations Facility, and Oshkosh School District. Resolution 13-493, authorize acquisition of properties, 114 East Irving Avenue and 808 West 7th Avenue. Resolution 13-494, disallowance of claim by Scott Stephanie. Resolution 13-495, disallowance of claim by Kevin Radloff. Resolution 13-496, approved combination Class A license, special Class B licenses, and operator licenses. I'll ask again if anybody would like to comment on any of these at this point in time. If not, I'll bring it back to the council and ask if there are questions or discussion on any of the items, or if any council member would like a particular item removed from the consent agenda. Mr. Peck, it looks like you're ready.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to pull item number 9, as I have a relationship with Christine Ann.
Pull
B.
Item
9B.
9B.
9B. Okay, well, that has been pulled. We'll consider it separately. Any other items people would like to have pulled or ask questions about, or any discussion about? Seeing none, I will ask the council for a motion and a second on the consent agenda minus item 9B.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. That's the consent agenda minus item 9B. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll ask the clerk to take the roll call vote of the council on the consent agenda minus item 9B.
Allison Osby.
Aye.
Peck.
Aye.
Herman.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Fitzgerald.
Aye.
Tower.
Aye.
Carried 6.
Okay, that takes us to items removed from the consent agenda, and there was one. It was item 9B. I will ask for a motion and a second on item 9B, which has to do with receipt of claim from the Christine Ann Center for alleged sewer backup.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, I will ask the clerk to take a vote on the item that was pulled from the consent agenda, item 9B, having to do with the Christine Ann Center for alleged sewer backup.
Allison Osby.
Aye.
Peck.
Present.
Herman.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Fitzgerald.
Aye.
Tower.
Aye.
Carried 5, 1 present.
Okay, that takes us to pending ordinances. These are ordinances, and we'll go through them one at a time. As I read one, if you'd like to come up and speak to that particular item, feel free to do so. Then we'll bring it back to the council for a motion and a second and consideration for approval. First one is ordinance 13-497, approval of parking regulation changes on Algoma Boulevard, Court Street, Jocelyn Street, Morgan Avenue, Pierce Avenue, Taft Avenue, Viola Avenue, Walnut Street, and 22nd Avenue. I see no one coming forward. I'll bring it back to the council and ask for a motion and a second on ordinance 13-497.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, I'll ask the clerk to take the roll call vote on ordinance 13-497.
Allison Osby.
Aye.
Peck.
Aye.
Herman.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Fitzgerald.
Aye.
Tower.
Aye.
Carried 6.
Okay, the next item is ordinance 13-498. Cancel the December 24, 2013 council meeting. Anybody like to speak to that? See no one come forward, I'll bring it back to the council for a motion and a second.
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. Ask clerk to take the roll call vote on ordinance 13-498.
Allison Osby? Aye. Heck?
Aye.
Herman?
Aye.
Clark?
Aye.
Fitzgerald?
Aye.
Tower?
Aye.
Carried 6.
Okay, that'll take us to new ordinances. These are ordinances that will require readings there are ordinances at 2 consecutive meetings. This will be the first reading of the ordinance tonight. These are ordinances which you could speak to tonight, or you can speak to next time when they'll come back to the council for possible approval. As I read it, if you want to come up and speak to the particular one tonight, feel free to do so. Ordinance 13-499, repeal and recreate solid waste disposal. Section 23-7, standards of service for residential areas related to an annual fee for collection recyclables. To make mention, this has to do with a $20 fee that are looking at possibly being in the budget for next year. I mentioned there'll be some fees in the budget for next year. Yes.
I'd like to speak to this. My name's Gary Gray, 815 West Linwood. Couple of questions. Is the recycling done for multi-unit residential housing, like two or three dwelling units? I know probably apartment units are recycled by private businesses, but does the city pick up for 1, 2, and 3 family units?
Up to four units, Mr. Gray, up to 4. So the fee would only apply to multifamily units up to 4.
Okay. I'm not sure if what I'm reading is clear enough, but anyhow, okay, good enough. The second question is when will this fee be billed on a yearly basis? Will it be on the property tax, or will it be sent separately? Because if it's put on the property tax bills, I can see a potential cash flow problem for 2014, since this is effective January 1st, which is after the property taxes for 2013 are sent out. So there would be a year where the city would not be collecting this.
It would be put on the tax bills that are distributed in December, so that we would have the cash flow immediately for January.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, the next one is ordinance 13-500, repeal and recreate a portion of the streets and sidewalks ordinance, section 25-68, snow removal. Anybody like to speak to that? Okay. Again, both of these will be brought up for consideration at the next council meeting for another reading and an opportunity for people to speak to those issues, and the council will consider these for approval at the next council meeting.
One question.
Sure.
I'm sorry. I know we're not in the question format, but because this is a ordinance change and we get a lot of complaints about sidewalks, could you just, for the citizens because we'll be voting on it next council meeting, what are the changes, just briefly? Sure.
I'm going to ask Mr. Potic to do it. He has more detail.
We have 2 things that we're clarifying. One was we have a requirement that that property owners at corners or near a handicap ramp also shovel the handicap ramp. And one clarification makes it so that we have some mid-block crosswalks, and those would be included with these revisions. The second was a change of wording where the current code talks about using salt to accelerate melting or prevent slipping, and we had some arguments from residents, and so we're now saying to accelerate melting of ice and prevent slipping, because the intent was we want the sidewalks to be clean. Some residents were not applying enough salt, and so that's why we have that clarification. It's those two items.
Okay, good, thank you.
Anybody else on that? Yes, sir. Okay, that takes us down to new resolutions. The first new resolution is Resolution 13-501, approved development agreement and lease agreement with Marion Road Apartments, LLC, assignment of lease to WHEDA, WHEDA, approved land disposition for proposed Rivers 2 development on the south side of Marion Road. Would anybody like to speak to that? Seeing nobody speak to that, I'm going to bring it back to the council for a motion and a second, although I heard rumors that somebody might come in to ask for something. I just heard rumors.
Well, I will move for Resolution 13-501.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Okay, discussion on Resolution 13-501.
There's, in the analysis, I just got some questions related to the key elements of the agreement. Section 5, or in the analysis, bullet point 5 refers to developer will build an 80-unit apartment dwelling with an assessed value of $5.2 million. Bullet point 6 says developer will obtain a loan of $7 million. Developer will spend $940,000. Why would somebody be taking a $7 million loan out for a property that's only going to have a $5.2 million assessed value?
Good question. The RDA asked the same question yesterday. It turns out that that particular piece of property takes a lot of remediation and soil reconstruction for the building to sit there. So that's why they've approached the city as to what the city could do to remediate the site in addition to what they can bring to the table. The construction is a cost. When it comes to the actual assessed value, the city assessors looked at their pro forma, and based on their net income and a capitalization rate of about 8.5%, I think he said yesterday, he comes up with about $5.2 million in assessed value.
Okay. And then, we've had some discussion about a workshop for the riverfront, property on the riverfront, about best uses and that. I appreciate the fact that we have someone willing to invest in the community and build, and help us, increase our assessed values. But is this the best use for this property? Are we... Again, I I know the Dumkeys, and I appreciate what they've done, and I know they've done some really good things in this community, but is this, this property's been available for quite a bit of time. If we wait a little bit longer, is there something we could possibly get better use out of it? Sometimes you have to dance with those that brung you, but I think you get the drift of my question.
And I certainly don't have a crystal ball as to what the future is going to hold. I don't know if the real estate market for office or commercial or retail or restaurants will increase in the downtown area at this point in time. So we could certainly be patient and wait for a project that maybe has higher value or has a different type of use. But if you're asking me today whether we have a proposal that's the highest and best use for that parcel of land based on the contamination and remediation required to correct that land, I'd say yes, we do have the highest and best use right today.
And the contamination was created by?
The industries that were there the 150 years prior to the city acquiring the property. I couldn't tell you exactly who did what when, though, but it's 150 years of filling and dumping and remediations required.
Okay. So sometimes regulations can help. Government regulations can sometimes save money to the government.
Yes, and speaking of government, the state did give us a $300,000 grant to help clean up the site, and that was based on this specific project.
Good.
So if we didn't do this project, then we'd have to give that money back and apply someday in the future. Hopefully they'd have that money available.
All right. Thank you.
Other question? Yeah, Mr. Pastel.
Mr. Davis, I had heard a few concerns from some citizens, And I think some of those concerns were misguided, and I'm hoping that maybe you can provide a bit of clarity here. One, there's a WIDA 710 flex financing is being used in this project. There had been some misconceptions that it was the low-income housing tax credits. That's not correct.
That is correct. They're not tax credits. It is WIDA financing, and they do have requirements tied to what rents you can charge. But unfortunately, the city of Oshkosh rents are lower than what WIDA would cap it at. So the city does not exceed the caps that WIDA has designated for the city of Oshkosh. And maybe I'd ask the developer if there's more specifics that you have regarding the WIDA program, because that's kind of his responsibility.
I've got some questions for the developer in a moment if Mr. Dumke has an opportunity to come up here too. But then the second question was just in regard to, the transaction is for the property is for $1, and people see this and they think, well, what, we're talking about all these budget concerns. Why do we do that? Tell us about why does the city negotiate a project like this, and what goes along with that sale for $1? What kind of requirements does a developer have to adhere to for acquiring this for $1?
I wish the city could sell it for $1 and that's it. Unfortunately, we have another $1 million of remediation that we have to do on that, so it's actually a situation where not only can we not sell it for more than $1, we have to put another $1 million into the remediation of the site since we're the owner, and we have to meet the DNR requirements for cleanup for that to even become a new apartment building or whatever use it would be in the future. So the city is sitting on that land, and it won't be developed unless we remediate that site, unless we're willing to wait many, many years until a market comes back that will not only remediate the site through the private sector, but also give us more than $1 for the property. I don't see that happening in the near future, and I'm not sure it's going to happen in the future, period.
Right. And ultimately, I mean, anyone who wanted to put up a lemonade stand would want to buy it for $1. The developer has some pretty strict guidelines that they need to adhere to as part of this development agreement.
Yes. It's part of the city's planned development for the Marion Road area, and when we did ask for requests for proposal for Marion Road, we asked for some pretty high architectural requirements, and while this specific project wasn't response to that RFP that was made a few years back, it does meet the requirements if we were going to hold them to the standard that the city held any developer a few years back when they did the RFP for proposals.
Thank you. Hey, can I just ask one more question? And Mr. Dumke, thanks for coming up here. Just one question that I had from citizens as well was in regard to the design on the cooling systems, and some individuals had made reference to the Rivers project and about the individual air conditioning units that were facing the riverfront. Is that part of the design for this project as far as you're aware, or is there?
We're going to have magic packed air units in the side of it that are for HVAC and for heating. So they won't be sticking out as far as that, but.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
And can I jump to Tom's question? Is that all right?
Sure.
You ready?
Go ahead. You got microphone, and others may have questions then too.
I believe that the city hired a market research analyst to come in and figure out how do we redevelop the downtown. And the number one thing they came back with is you need housing. It's a catch-22. Everybody wants office and retail, and they want restaurants, but you don't get that until the housing comes first. So if you want to redevelop the downtown, from what I believe from what that research came back with is you got to start with housing.
Just
Other
one.
questions, Mr. Dunn?
I'm good. I'm sorry. One final question for Mr. Dumke in relation to the. I was asking about the 710 Flex Finance program that WIDA has, but with the market rates that you're looking at as far as the rents go and its relation to the program.
20% of the units have to be in a set-aside, which means that 16 of the units, there's an income restriction that will be involved with those 16 units. We'd be allowed to charge probably about $200 to $300 a month more than what we are currently capable of charging for rent, so it won't affect the income on the property. And on those 16 units, an example of the income that somebody could make is if it's a two-family unit, they have to make $41,650 or less in order to live in those 16 units. So it's going to be probably almost everybody in that apartment complex will qualify to live there anyhow. It's just, but that's that's the measurement for those 16 units.
Right. This isn't, and I ask that because this isn't low-income housing.
That's correct.
It's moderate-income housing.
Yep.
In
There's
that
16
respect,
units
with
that are
those
set aside.
16 units only.
That the example of somebody has to make $41,650 a year or less if there are two family members.
Mm-hmm.
And then it goes up, if there's four family members, it's $52,000. If there's one family member, if it's a single person taking a unit, it's $36,450. But again, that's the qualification that we have to make sure that they have in order to live there. And then what WEDA puts on there for a cap is amount of rent you're allowed to charge. So on those 16 units, the maximum we could charge is $1,171, which we're not going to be able to charge.
Right.
So it won't affect the valuation of the property.
Thank you.
Just one other comment on that. You may have more, Sean, but is there a time frame on that for those units? Is that forever, or is there a point in time where?
During the term of the loan. So
What?
7 years.
7 years. So after 7 years, if those units are not rented to people in that income zone, they're open to anybody.
That's
Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay. All right. I was just following up on that one question. If you have more questions, go right ahead.
So
Other
Burke, are you
questions?
saying that the income could either be raised above or go below?
No,
After
no,
7 years?
those units would be full market.
Yeah, we don't have to check anybody's income if we don't want
There
to.
would be no income stipulations at all after 7 years if those units weren't rented.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is there at any point in time any opportunity then to have it end up becoming low income
Well, on any
after 7 years?
on any project, you could go and submit for tax credits and try and get tax credits on it, but it has nothing to do with what we're doing here.
So what is the target? I guess the target market that you're looking for. I mean, is it
Somebody
college?
somebody
Is it-
fresh out of college, new in a job, a teacher, that just got into the system, a young professional that wants to live downtown and hopefully work downtown and eat downtown. I think that there is a market for that right now, and that's why we're doing this.
So, I mean, at any point, I guess one of the questions I would have was, with this particular project, was there or could there be where it's multi-use, where, perhaps it's apartments, but then there's also office space, below? I mean, is that something that's, within the wheelhouse of possibilities to take a look at for this particular project?
We looked at it, and just right now, the feasibility of doing something like that isn't just not there. There's not a market for it here in Oshkosh or if you go to downtown Milwaukee, you'll see similar developments, and the first floor, when they tried to do that, is empty. And it's just a tough time for something like that to happen. But, I mean, ideally, we're leaving the best parcel there for a retail or hopefully a nice office development. The best parcel is still left. And then when you're talking about maximizing value, I mean, we're putting 80 units on a little over 2 acres. You're not going to get much more of an assessment from anything else to be able to pack that much on it. I mean, we're really maximizing the site. Very similar to the river site. That's 1.8 acres, the first development. We fitted 60 units on there. So, I mean, we are definitely maximizing the site. If you were to just stick a restaurant on there, you'd have 1/4 of the valuation, and you'd still have to burn up the same amount of land because the parking requirements are so high, and so when you're talking about maximizing the site, most definitely we are maximizing the site.
So do you have color renderings of the development? Because we have black and white. Because some of the things that
I apologize. I thought they were in there, but
well, they're black and white, so
Okay.
they're not color. I think
Can you have any color?
Here we go.
because part of the things that we had talked about, which I can't remember if Tom just alluded to or not, was that obviously we have the vision. We talked about the riverfront, making sure that we're getting best use, and and to be honest, Mr. Dumpy, it's not even really the project or you personally, but making sure that we only have so much water space that we're able to build on. And we had talked about things like beautification. We had talked about potentially having design standards and those types of things. And so, unfortunately, this is occurring before the workshop, which doesn't give me a tremendously great feeling, other than obviously you're a reputable developer. But if this would be approved tonight, how soon before you guys break ground or commit to whatever facade will be on the building?
I don't know if you can see this in color up here or not, but I mean, basically, this is what we submitted to Plan Commission, were these elevations, and it's what we plan on going with.
Maybe you might even bring it up, or give me Pat, why don't you put them over there? I've seen them, yeah, I can start down here. It's going to be easier, I think, for people to see.
As Mr. Dumke's passing this up, Mr. Davis wasn't on staff, and I was on staff. I had just gotten on staff when the Five Rivers development was being discussed, and the request for proposal that we required from those developers had certain design standards. And so there were design standards in there. It's just they've kind of gotten lost over the years because Mr. Dumke wasn't mandated to abide by those rules, but he has, even though it wasn't required of him. He provided that. So the design standards that were developed were probably developed, Darren, would you say 2006, 2007, perhaps, something like that. So they are a little dated in terms of how long they've been out there, and they've kind of gotten lost in as time has gone on. But Mr. Dumke's development does propose to do that. And at one point, Mr. Dumke, in the first discussion Andy and I ever had when we were here, when I came to Oshkosh, was about an office development at the corner. Again, it was meeting the standards that had been set. Andy was willing to do it, but unfortunately, the market at that moment, literally, the market was falling apart as we were discussing it, and then that office building idea fell apart. I think we probably have those put away somewhere, but it was a very nice looking development. It's just that the market just wasn't there at the time, and it still has yet to recover. That's just the hard part, and I think that's what Andy's referring to. The corner of Jackson and the river across from Beckett's, that's a very prime spot, and having an office development there, I think, is a very worthwhile goal to have. But the residential development it's a chicken and egg thing, as Andy said. What do you put in first? The residential development allows us to get started, and it still leaves us the opportunity to work on something of a higher quality and higher value, which is really what we're looking for down there as we move along.
I think, there's another concern that I have, because it's all encompassing, because we've got three right in a row, is we've talked about, which I had confirmed with Mr. Davis and Mr. Roloff, was that, obviously this, affects the TIF. And, there's certainly pros to this type of development. The tax revenue that would come in would hopefully be about $120,000 to help with a TIF that, is technically underperforming or not performing well. The concern that I have is we've talked with the TIF workshops that we've had is that we've been extremely generous with our TIFs, and we've also talked about having TIFs that are related directly to situations in which provide opportunities for jobs. Does this then obligate us for every other development to offer a TIF, across the river, down the river, so that every single development then is going to be needed by TIF dollars, and we have to hope that those TIFs perform well. So it's not the project, it's not the developer, it's not anything like that. It's more of a concern that I have, that does this obligate us then to have to look at this for every single project that comes to the river? Because that potentially could put us in a unique situation, given the circumstances that we are with the city, the Moody's report that just came out, and a number of issues like that. So as much as I would like to just look at this and say, hey, this is great, let's approve it, there are some other considerations.
I don't believe it sets a precedent, because each of these parcels have their unique characteristics when it comes to what can be redeveloped, what kind of value there can be, what kind of improvements the city would need to supply for that. In this particular case, the city owns the land, so we're kind of motivated to sell it so it can get back on the tax roll. It's contaminated, and we have to clean it up before anybody's going to redevelop that site. So if we don't do something similar to this on this particular piece, we're not going to get the value that we need for the TIF district. Now, if you're talking about other pieces along the river that the city doesn't own that we don't have to remediate, that's something that I think the council still has to look at when, almost like a TIF application that we've created in the last year or two, when it comes to is the developer providing the equity, are we getting enough value out of the building, all those criteria that we used for a TIF-type project. In this case, the city created the TIF. We were basically the applicant, and now we're looking to create the most value to help that particular TIF out. Every other situation, I think we need to treat as it's a brand-new TIF district that needs to go through like an application vetting process.
And I didn't have the CIP budget in front of me prior to coming here today. With the costs that are involved in that, how much of it are we then borrowing through the capital improvement program?
We'll be borrowing $800,000 through the capital improvement program, and that'll be supplemented by $300,000 in a state DNR grant for the remediation. The total remediation is $1.1 million, so we're going to get $300,000 through a grant. Even though we're borrowing for it, it will be funded through the tax increment financing district number 21, because the agreement you have before you provides that Mr. Dumpke and his partners are required to have a minimum value of $5.2 million, regardless of what Mr. Schwer assesses it at. Mr. Dumpke agrees to pay taxes on $5.2 million. That $5.2 million over 6 or 7 years, Alan, the idea is that over 6 or 7 years, it will pay back the $800,000 that we need to fund that loan. So it's even though it goes against our borrowing capacity, it is fully funded through the value that's getting created and being guaranteed by Mr. Dumpke and his partners. That's the value of it. So it's.
But do we also get a reimbursed then for our borrowing costs? Because obviously through the bonds, we're not getting that money borrowed to us for free. So is it the money in addition to the interest that we have to pay on the monies for this particular project?
No, not that I've seen in the others' calculations.
More questions?
Nope.
More questions? Others? Just make a couple of comments. I do sit on the RDA, being mayor, and the RDA vetted this fairly significantly yesterday with one of Mr. Dumpke's partners, Mr. Schultz. The same kinds of issues came up yesterday that Mr. Peck raised and other people raised about the valuation. That we also had the assessor come in. I think there are pieces that all of us, if we were going to put it together and wish for something, would be a little different than it is. But I think with the answers that we've gotten and with the reality of the world, I think it's a good project for a number of reasons. One, I think will put more housing down there, which increases the likelihood that the other part of the property, which was mentioned either by Mr. Dumpke or Mr. Davis, can't remember which, we're saving for commercial or retail development, which is the property along Jackson and the river, which is probably the most prime part of the property and the most likely. So this, I think, increases the possibility of further development, raises that possibility up to a much higher level. The second thing is this project gets started now, and we begin to deal with a TIF that is underperforming and is right now taking money out of another TIF to make it work right, and we need to get started on that pretty quickly. And the third thing is, as Mr. Dumpke said, this project will provide more value per acre, per foot, however you want to do it, than most other projects that maybe some people would rather see. If you'd rather see a restaurant, you might have a restaurant, but it's not going to provide the feedback to it. The restaurant probably won't be there without more housing units. So I think it's the right project. I think this group has done good projects in the past, which we're appreciative of. They're local. It's not somebody from out of town like we've had before when we had some issues that arose down there on the Marion Road. So Mr. Dumpke has to look us in the eye when he drives up and down the street or at his other establishment. So I think it's a project worth approving at this time for those reasons. And that was also the opinion, the asked opinion of the RDA yesterday after some significant discussion over some of the same issues, the valuation and
I know I received some questions about potentially delaying this, and maybe Mr. Dumpke can answer that. I have an obligation to Councilmember Cummings, and so I'll say that Mr. Cummings asked that I pass on the council. He felt the issue should be laid over. I told him I would pass that along, but I also told him I would say I would disagree with that suggestion because I think there's value into moving this forward. We've been working with Mr. Dumpke a long time on this, and we've asked that WEDA grant him extensions so that we could work out the final details of this development agreement. I guess I'd let Mr. Dumke speak to the deadlines that he's under for the WIDA financing, but we have asked this to be delayed, I believe, on at least 2 occasions already. So that's why I asked Mr. Cummings to understand my disagreement with them, albeit respectively, so that council was aware of that. But given all the things that have been discussed, we believe this is the highest and best use of the land at this time.
Go ahead.
We tossed the word WIDA around. Would you, for the viewing public, tell them what WIDA stands for?
WIDA is an acronym for Wisconsin Housing and Economic Development Authority. They provide financing for various housing and economic development projects throughout the state.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with the mayor. You know, I am a little concerned that this project is moving in front of our workshop, and it kind of, but I think there's enough for the river that we can, through the workshop, continue to have a vision for what we want that to look like. I think there's plenty of room for that. And this will complement the rivers, I think. It looks from the drawings, it's going to blend in very well with what's there already. And obviously, as the mayor said too, you know, Mr. Dumke and his partners have built some pretty nice quality buildings in the Oshkosh area, and they continue to invest in Oshkosh, which I think is just an excellent situation. And it really does take to me, it doesn't feel like we're just, well, this is the best thing and we've had this land out there forever. I think this is a quality project. It helps our tax increment district number 21. Yes, it's going to take some time to get our money back, but I have confidence that they will be able to rent the facility and pay the taxes and everything that goes with it. And so I'm comfortable at this time in supporting the project and moving it forward. And the more we can develop down in that area, whether it's the Riverwalk or it's the South Shore development, all of these should enhance Oshkosh, should enhance the opportunity for other developers or themselves, as they even have in their documents that they may be looking at developing another multifamily property in that area. So again, I applaud them for bringing this forward and continuing to invest in Oshkosh and the surrounding area. So I'll be supporting it. Thank you.
Any other comments? Yeah, South Salisbury.
You know, I guess what I would like to say, I guess, to staff is that, so that we're not in a situation in which, knowing that the riverfront has been a sensitive issue and we've talked about vision and so on and so forth, is to, if the project has a sense of urgency, not to drop it on us 4 days before it's absolutely imperative that there's a vote passed. You know, moving forward, if there are things that we have discussed about in regards to the vision of the city, and there's a project like this, you know, regardless if it's budget season or whatever the case may be, please recommend to us to find time in our schedule to have the workshop so that we're not putting the cart before the horse again.
Okay, just a couple of final comments. One, I think the architecture will be consistent with the rivers and yet different than the rivers as I understand it, because one thing I had expressed concern about yesterday was the image has to be different. You're applying to a different market, so it'll be consistent with, but a little bit different and kind of more modern and more riverfront, downtown, urban environment type of approach. The second thing is, Ms. Osby, I agree with you very much. In fact, Mr. Davis and Mr. Roloff have both heard from me on this one that I was
Heard an echo.
that I was disappointed in two things. One, we just found out about it 4 days ago. I had a discussion with Mr. Dumke this afternoon. It's been going on for a while in the city, too. We just found out about it as of Friday, and that was if you got your packet, you read your packet, and it was not passed by the RDA until yesterday, and 24-hour turnaround is not really sufficient turnaround. We've had that issue before, so
Well,
I think that's an appropriate message. So I very much agree, and I think.
And to be honest, believe it or not, you know, council members do leave Oshkosh occasionally. This happened to be one of these situations where I left Friday noon. I did not return home late until Sunday, so technically I didn't even have the full 4 days. You know, I had Monday and today, and unfortunately, my phone aired just prior to I left, and I lost all my contacts, so unfortunately, I was unable to reach out to Mr. Dumpke. On the flip side, when it comes to situations like this, I would certainly hope that the developers would take the initiative to reach out to us well beforehand. Those types of things are similar, are certainly helpful to us. So, with that, I'm done.
Agree. Okay, if there are no further comments, I will ask the city clerk to take the roll call vote of the council on Resolution 13-501.
Ellison Osby?
Aye.
Peck?
Aye.
Herman?
Aye.
Clark?
Aye.
Fitzgerald?
Aye.
Tower?
Aye.
Carried 6.
Okay, guys, don't go away. Resolution 13-502, approve plan development for construction of multifamily apartment complex, Rivers 2 development, south side of Marion Road. Anybody like to come forward to speak to that? If not, I'll bring it back to council for a motion and a second on Resolution 13-502.
So moved.
Second.
Comments? This has more to do with the look of development. Mr. Fitzgerald.
Oh, I guess I'm accenting our last discussion, but I know this went through Plan Commission, I think September 3rd, so I know I read those minutes back about 2 months ago, and I've been having conversations with 3 other developers in the community on this over the last 3 months, trying to get answers for them. They've been concerned about the project, and I think I was able to get them the answers that they needed, and at any rate, I support the project for all the reasons that we stated in the last discussion.
These two, 501 and 502, really go very much together and allow the conversation to go back and forth between the two. The prior one really was on the development agreement, this on the development itself. So, anybody else? Okay, I'll ask the clerk to take the roll call vote on Resolution 13-502.
Allison Osby?
Aye.
Peck?
Aye.
Herman?
Aye.
Clark?
Aye.
Fitzgerald?
Aye.
Tower?
Aye.
Carried 6.
Takes us to Resolution 13-503, approve agreement with AECOM for environmental engineering services to obtain environmental closure on site of proposed Rivers 2 development, $120,000. Anybody like to come forward to speak to that? See no one come forward to speak to that. I'll bring it back to the council for a motion and a second on Resolution 13-503.
So moved. Second.
Discussion. Okay, I ask clerk to take the roll call vote on Resolution 13-503.
Allison Osby?
Aye.
Peck?
Aye.
Herman?
Aye.
Clark?
Aye.
Fitzgerald?
Aye.
Tower?
Aye.
Carried 6.
Takes us to Resolution 13-504. Rescind Resolution 13-362 approving land donation for Riverwalk improvements along the Fox River from Six Rivers Investment, LLC, Geldwin property. Anybody like to come forward to speak to that? See no one coming forward to speak to it. Bring it back to the council for a motion and a second.
So moved. Second.
Been moved and second. Discussion.
Just a question for Mr. Davis. Again, for the citizens, could you explain why we're rescinding land that was donated to the city?
Subsequent to the donation, staff and the developers of the Geldwin property met with DNR representatives, and the DNR indicated that if they would go through with the donation, then the owners of the Geldwin property would give up their right to put private docks along the shoreline on the south shore of the Fox River. And at this point in time, the Geldwin developers see that as critical to the redevelopment of that site. So they were put in a position where they still want to help with the installation of the Riverwalk, but they can't give up the private docks, which they think are important to the future sales and leasing of that space. So we rescind the donation, and that's why we're working on the easement, and that's why we actually have that on closed session tonight to talk about that.
Very good. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Just make the final comment that I will be voting present here because of a potential conflict of interest here. Okay, I'll ask clerk to take the roll call vote on Resolution 13-504.
Allison Osby?
Aye.
Peck?
Aye.
Herman?
Aye.
Clark?
Aye.
Fitzgerald?
Aye.
Tower?
Present.
Carried, 5, 1 present.
Okay, takes us to Resolution 13-505, approve opposing SB 349, preempting municipal authority to regulate water quality and quantity, air quality, use of explosive, borrow pits associated with DOT construction projects, and non-metallic mining. Anybody like to come forward to speak to that? This has to do with some proposed legislation at the state level, which Mr. Clark has been following very closely and asked us to take this. It's right now, I don't believe there is a piece of legislation that's currently before either the Assembly or the Senate, but they're both talking about it and coming forward later. You want to bring us up on that? And then we can.
This piece of legislation.
Well, first of all, we have to get on the
motion in a second,
Okay,
correct?
I was going to let people know that in case somebody wants to speak to it. So. Just briefly say it, and then we get the motion second.
In brief, it's a law that's supposed to be designed to deal with frac sand mining, which is a petroleum extraction process. But the bill has some language in it that is very broad and not necessarily related to frac sand mining.
Okay. Bring it back for a motion in a second.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, discussion.
I would like to propose an amendment to this, adding a line into the proposed resolution after the statement, whereas SB 349 is unnecessarily broad and eliminates local control in areas well beyond frac sand mining, and then inserting a new whereas the City of Oshkosh has invested $50 million in stormwater management, which would be directly affected by SB 349, and then continuing with the resolution as presented.
Is there a second to the amendment?
Second.
Anybody like to come forward to speak to the amendment? I always let people speak to amendments. Okay, we'll bring it back here. We've had a motion and a second. Anybody else would like to talk about the amendment? It's an amendment to Resolution 13-505. I believe that you all have the wording already.
Yes.
I believe, Mr. Mark, so you have the wording, so we don't need to go through that again. Anybody need it read to them again?
Nope.
Okay, I'll ask clerk to take the roll call vote on the amendment.
Allison Osby? Aye. Pack?
Aye.
Herman?
Aye.
Clark?
Aye.
Fitzgerald?
Aye.
Tower?
Aye.
Carried, 6.
Okay, now we come back to the amended motion, Resolution 13-505. Any further comments?
Well, I agree with what Mr. Clark said, is that this particular proposed legislation down in Madison, while we often hear the term local control out of Madison, this is a severe limitation of local control. And, I mean, we would not be able to get costs back for damage to streets done by hauling of materials in this area. If the new operators of the Vulcan Quarry decided to expand their operations at this time, if this would pass, we would have no way of dealing with that based on the interests of our citizens. It would have to be based on what the ladies and gentlemen in Madison deem proper. So, you know, again, it's rather interesting that out of the building that this proposed legislation is emanating from, we often hear the term local control, and this legislation is anything but, so I wholeheartedly support this.
Any other comments?
I thank the council for listening at a previous meeting to this, and thank you for the support of this. In talking with some other community leaders from other communities, there are many agendas that have a similar resolution coming up in the next couple of weeks throughout the state. So we are, as cities, sending a clear message to Madison, and we're sending a clear message to our representatives that in order for us to best represent our citizens, you can't take away the control that our citizens expect from us.
Okay, see no further comments, so I'll ask clerk to take the roll call vote on amended Resolution 13-505.
Allison Osby? Aye. Pack?
Aye.
Herman?
Aye.
Clark?
Aye.
Fitzgerald.
Aye.
Tower.
Aye.
Carried 6.
Okay, takes us to council discussion, direction to the city manager, and future agenda items. Future agenda items, we have a November 20th budget CIP workshop starting at 5:30. Tentatively scheduled from 5:30 to 7:30, but I reckon we'll take the time we need to get through the discussion that we need on that particular night, to answer any further questions we have on the budget, to bring to light any further inputs we may have gotten from citizens in the meantime, and then talk about possible amendments to the city manager's budget that they could put together, and do the background work to make sure that on the night of the 26th, we make amendments. We have the data and the information here to make the necessary adjustments so we can make the final decisions on the budget on the 26th, which is absolutely critical, as I understand it, in terms of getting the tax things out. So,
Mr. Mayor, I did the public presentation on the budget. Normally, we've had meetings in the past over at the Senior Center, and the attendance hasn't been very good, so we changed it to a video that OCMS has put on. It's about a half-hour presentation that I gave, and I'd encourage council members or any member of the public to look at that, provide a little more background about things related to the budget. Certainly can bring those things up, but upon reflection with some of the things that have been discussed at the work sessions, you may want to take a look at that in advance of the meeting, just to get some additional perspective on some of the reasoning behind some of the recommendations, so you have some background to that.
okay, next item is December 3rd joint workshop with Common Council, Plan Commission, Landmarks Commission, Architectural Design Standards Draft Code. This is something that has just recently come up. Mr. Roloff, or someone want to talk about this, who knows about this?
Sure. This is the architectural design standards were something the council asked that we have done for this year. The staff and I met recently with the initial draft, and quite a bit has changed because they've had citizen input. They've had a group of stakeholders involved in this, and they would like to have a joint workshop with the council, Plan Commission, and Landmarks Commission. I believe the Plan Commission felt that this would be a good idea. This would be held immediately after the December 3rd Plan Commission meeting, so approximately 4:30, 5 o'clock, depending on how heavy the agenda is. I'm not sure, Mr. Davis, do you have anything to add to that? Who's all going to be there? I know Lakota, you were kind of debating whether Lakota was going to be able to be there.
We're expecting the consultant to be there, as well as staff, and this is the follow-up to the earlier in the spring or early summer when we had Lakota up here last to kind of introduce the standards that we were looking at. And as Mr. Roloff indicated, based on the input we've gotten from the committee that we put together for the implementation, they've given us a lot of good suggestions about how this could be accomplished. So you haven't seen that yet, and that's what we'd like to show everybody at the same time.
Any comments on that?
Would we be getting that material before that meeting, or would it just be?
Yes,
Okay.
at least a week before.
Okay, thank you.
And we're talking about, what time does the Planning Commission meet?
They start at 4. So
realistic that they'd be done by 4:30, or?
Yes. That's our expectation based on what projects we'd have to take action on that evening.
Okay, so if people could make that, that would be a good thing to be at?
We also,
Standards or something that
just
are-
as a warning, we also thought that before the council meeting, the 45 minutes probably wouldn't do justice to the design standards, so that's why we kind of gravitated to an evening that kind of left it available to go 1 or 2 hours into the discussion.
Okay, anything else on that? All right, that takes us to next, a workshop on special events to be determined. That'll be after the first of the year.
I have a comment on that. I would like to have that scheduled in January, because I don't want to go into next year without possible changes to special event policy or things that may come out of that. I think we need to have that before we start getting all our special events. So I think January or early February, if possible, because the next workshop he's going to mention needs to come in front of that one, because that's important.
We'll set a date.
Ms. Alcindor?
I guess a suggestion I would like to make is that, really, this is a partnership between us and the CVB. I think it would be helpful to have Ms. Hillsberg available and with us that date to make sure that we're on the same page, because I think what happens is we express concerns, which with the special events we have to talk about, but I also don't want to send a message that we're not in support of the event city, because if we can put heads in beds, that's revenue for us. But we do have to talk about that double-edged sword in which it does put strains on the city in a number of areas, police, fire, at times parks, things of that nature. Also, too, I think it's imperative that we start to put together a calendar so that we're not blindly every 2 weeks or every council meeting approving, because what ends up happening is the backlash from that is, there wasn't enough parking. Menominee Park was overcrowded because we had too many events. So, there's things like that would be helpful. If anything that's been approved for next year already, we have that on a calendar, as well as include Ms. Hillsberg.
It's a good idea. Marketing production people have to talk occasionally.
We're already including Ms. Hillsberg in those discussions. And it's not the logistical issues that staff typically works on regarding parking. It's really about, is there an appropriate time to say yes or no to an event? And if so, what are those criteria? Originally, that was something that when the special event ordinance was getting originally proposed, the opposition to it was we can't have staff sit there and say yes or no to a special event. So staff took that direction to say, well, then we work on the elements to make the special event as successful as possible from administration standpoint. Now we're hearing we got to make sure that we're dealing with quality events. So it is appropriate to have the Convention and Visitors Bureau, because if they're out marketing, we got to make sure that they're marketing the right thing. But the staff, I think, has taken on the responsibilities that were given to it under the special event ordinance. I think the real issue is do we want to start saying yes or no to given events based on their demand for service or the lack of heads in beds or some other criteria like that. And so those are the things that we're, eventually that's going to come to council, because that's more of a policy issue than do we have adequate parking, are there adequate police and fire. Those issues we've been working through. But as you saw with some of the firefighters tonight, the demands that have been placed, is there a point where we say the quantity's too much, even though we are the event city? How much is too much? And are we going to say no? And if so, what are those criteria by which we would say no? So those are all the things that we're looking at right now.
Well, and I think as well as I think staff has to be honest that, because it doesn't sound like there's like staff meets kind of as the need comes about when somebody comes to them, and sometimes they're given adequate notice, sometimes it's kind of last minute. So it would be interesting to hear from them if there are certain policies to put in place to help alleviate that last minute, get it to council just before. And I think as council, we've run across enough situations within this last year, in 2013 and certainly most in 2012, where something's come in last minute, and we've had some follow-up from that afterwards. So things, I guess, to make it a little bit more smooth for all of us.
And I would also agree with Councilmember Allison Osby about a calendar so that we don't overload certain parts of the city. I mean, do we need 3 events in Menominee Park and now our citizens can't get to Menominee Park, or we have 3 events in South Park or something like that? I do think it's important not to use it as sole criteria to whether an event comes or goes, but maybe we put them in a different location depending on the event. So I think a calendar so that, again, there's been times when the mayor's read 15 to 20 special events, and it's like, I don't remember what I approved in January, and now it's April or May.
Unfortunately, I think the hell story from that really came to somebody who never applied for a special event permit and showed up at Menominee Park saying, where do I set up my special event? And the staff's answer was, what special event? There are 2 other events going on. Are you this or that event? Those 2 events that were approved by council were not a conflict. Staff managed those quite well. Somebody literally showed up, and there were a variety of circumstances, but they never applied for the permit in the first place. And the 2 other event organizers, you got to give them credit. What they said is they worked with Mr. Maurer to say, we'll make room for this event, but it was inconvenient. It wasn't the greatest, but this group thought that someone had, it was a long story.
Yeah.
But it's not, sometimes the logistics just don't work out. Under normal circumstances, by code, we should have said no. We should have said go home. But literally, they showed up with their food and their tents, and they were ready to all set up. So we do have something in our strategic plan that says have a can-do attitude, and our staff bends over backwards to make sure that we do that. So that's one of the issues about, well, do you just say no and say, sorry, you didn't comply with the 45-day requirement? With tears streaming down eyes and things of that nature, how do you say no when the groups are saying, we'll make room for you? So those are the issues we struggle with. And don't want to bring in too many tear-jerking stories, but at the same time, those are some of the issues that we're working with, probably more so than some of the logistical issues, which I think staff has got down pretty well.
And we actually have a calendar. We're just looking at how to make it more publicly accessible, and so that is something we routinely review.
Okay, thank you.
We all okay there? Okay, the next one, joint workshop, Common Council, Plan Commission, Redevelopment Authority, Vision of Riverfront Development, as was spoken about before by Councilmember Allison Osby, and brought up. I reckon we want that in January, early February, too? Is that, do we have priorities?
You've got two really good ones to start the year with.
Yep, well, that's what we're here to do, right? That's where we get paid the big bucks. Okay, next is discussion of timeline for city managers' evaluation and goals under our system. The deputy mayor has responsibility for directing and coordinating this process, and so I'm going to turn it over to the deputy mayor, Councilmember Herman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have met a couple times as a council to kind of get our parameters and guidelines together. I guess what I'm looking for from council is we have that November 20th workshop. I'd like to go in closed session and get everything wrapped up as far as the city manager's evaluation goes so that we can get it on the council agenda for the one meeting in December. Council be available to meet on the 20th, if that works, or?
Let me ask a question. Do we have the questionnaires that need to be filled out by us to get to you so that you can create a sheet?
You will get them. You will probably get them yet this week.
Okay, so we'll get them, so it would mean the council members need, the 20th is not very far away.
No.
That's what I'm getting at, 20th is.
But we pretty much have discussed questions and where we're going, so I think we can.
So what do you want the council to be prepared to do that night, and what will they get before and when is what I'm asking you for.
You will get, yet this week, you will get the questionnaire that you need to look at to evaluate the city manager. We need to discuss the evaluation and his goals, and if we are going to set any goals for 2014.
Has the city manager been asked to provide us with a statement regarding?
He is now. Has he heard it tonight? I was going to tell him after the meeting that, yes.
Okay,
He's already, he and I have had some preliminary discussions already.
I just want to make sure so people kind of know what they can expect to have.
Yep.
So you have a questionnaire to fill out ahead of time, which we'll need to get back.
And we'll try to get the city manager's eval out to everybody prior to the 20th meeting too.
Okay.
So that,
well, I think that's going to be necessary.
Yes.
I think that's going to.
I think there'll be time that he can self-evaluate himself and get in our packets for Friday maybe. So.
Again, 20th is just a week away. So.
Correct.
Are we all okay there, folks?
I'm comfortable with that date.
Yeah, we've had, I say, having had 2 meetings,
I just want to make sure everybody's clear and
Yep.
they know what's going to happen during the next week and they know what their responsibilities are for that meeting. All set?
Any questions?
Okay.
If anybody has any questions, just give me a call.
Sure.
And I will also have the tally sheet of staff's evaluation available also.
Okay. Thanks. Thanks for leading this process and being on top of this over the last couple of months. Appreciate it. Okay, next, citizen statements to the council. This is another opportunity for any citizens to come up and make any comments they would like about the city, positive or negative. You do come up. Please give us your name, address, limit your comments to no more than 5 minutes, speak directly to the council, speak to nothing else that was on the agenda, and no electioneering. I see no one coming forward, so I'll move on to the next thing, which is council member announcements and statements. And here's a very pleasant one, the recognition of the Lourdes Academy Girls Cross Country Team State Championship. Mr. Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to make a quick comment of commendation. I'm newer to the council, my rookie year here, and I don't know if there's been much tradition with this or precedent set aside, but certainly the schools in our community are doing some remarkable things all the way around with athletics, band, forensics, POMs, in every aspect, and we have a lot to be proud of in this community. I think it's particularly spectacular when there's a team state championship won in any of those aspects by any of our students in the community, and just wanted to publicly, as a council member, give my commendation to Coach Paul Brown and the Lourdes Academy girls cross country team that won the state championship a week ago Saturday. Yeah, this was their third state championship in 4 years now, so they're really become a remarkable powerhouse in the state and have made Oshkosh proud.
Very good, thank you. I would second that, and also say we have Oshkosh North football team, which is in the semifinals this Friday up in Ashwaubenon, so maybe we'll have another commendation.
No, leave it at that.
Yeah, don't
jinx that.
I'm trying to be supportive, guys.
Mayor,
Yeah,
may I ask city manager a question?
sure, go ahead.
This time, just out of curiosity, do you know when it will come before council to vote regards to the bond purchases for both the GO and the revenue?
That was something that council did under a parameters resolution because of the timing associated with year-end and holidays. The bid opening is actually tomorrow, and I will report the findings, assuming that they're acceptable within the parameters established by council. There were specific interest rates that were established and other parameters that were in there. Provided they meet those parameters and look acceptable to us, then I'm required by law to sign off on those tomorrow, and I will put that in the newsletter for the council to advise you on what the rate was and what Ellers normally does on a presentation at a council meeting. We'll be providing that information to you in the newsletter.
Okay. So there's no formal vote then that's required for the purchase?
No, because we weren't sure if we were, when we did this a month ago, we weren't sure if we were literally going to be knocking against the door of Thanksgiving, and then that's really not a good time to sell bonds because people are doing things that they normally do around Thanksgiving. So we wanted to time it so that we could do it like on a Wednesday or Thursday, and that's what we're doing.
Okay.
Okay, next thing is city manager announcements and statements.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The first item has to do with an amendment to agreement with Moss and Associates. The council, through our closed sessions on our negotiating with the acquisition of the properties, recognized Mr. Moss has been doing some additional work associated with property acquisition as well as relocation, and it took it over the $25,000 threshold, so I'm required by ordinance to notify you that the $10,000 amendment takes the total to $28,000, which is over that threshold. The next item is Citizens for Strong Oshkosh is doing their second annual meeting with a sort of a look to the future for 2014. What's the forecast for all of the governmental entities in the immediate area? The city, the county, the Voc Tech District, the university, and the school district will all be making a presentation. It will be at Oak Lawn School. The group decided to hold it there to show off Oak Lawn School and the community's investment in that facility. It starts at 5 p.m. It's intended to run until about 6:30. Our presentations are relatively short, and then we leave an adequate amount of time for questions and answers from the public. I have 5 bullet points on one slide and 5 minutes to do it, so imagine that for me. And then lastly, in the council packet is a third quarter financial review. No big surprises versus what we've been discussing over all of our budget work sessions, but it's there for you. And then lastly, as an announcement, I've been asked this question. Officially, leaf pickup ends this Friday, but there's always a caveat on that. A lot of it has to do with the weather, and a lot of it has to do with the need to transition our leaf pickup trucks over to snow. The more the snow's coming, the quicker we need to transfer them over. But if we do have any vehicles that are remaining that are available for leaf pickup and they haven't been transformed into snow removal equipment, we'll continue to do it. It won't be on the strict schedule that we currently have, but we will continue to do it, equipment available. So right now, we haven't transformed all our equipment yet. We're still trying to get what's done this week, but if there's a couple vehicles still available, we'll keep doing leaf pickup. But you can also drop it off at the yard waste drop-off facility on Witzel, Idaho, and also we'll be doing a pickup, the first week of December, Dave?
Brush week, yes.
Yeah, brush week in December. You can also leave leaves in bags is what we're doing again. So I know there are still leaves on trees, and I want to go out and shake my own tree, and I know other residents are like that. There always seem to be a few stragglers, so we recognize that and try to have a more common sense approach to it. That's all I have.
Okay, the next thing is a motion to go into closed session. I'm going to ask the Deputy Mayor to read the motion.
I move that following the adjournment of this meeting, the council convene into closed session pursuant to Section 19.85, Parent 1, Parent E of the Wisconsin State Statutes for the purposes of negotiating the acquisition of an easement public property along the Fox River from Six Rivers LLC to construct a public riverwalk pedestrian trail from the Oregon Street Bridge westerly to the former Boatworks property and along the parcel immediately east of and adjacent to the Oregon Street Bridge where competitive and bargaining reasons require a closed session.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? See no discussion, ask the clerk to take the roll call vote on the motion to go into closed session.
Allison Osby?
Aye.
Pat?
Aye.
Herman?
Aye.
Clark?
Aye.
Fitzgerald?
Aye.
Tower?
Aye.
Carried 6.
Okay, motion to adjourn. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned. We will meet at 20 after in the city manager's office.